Hey, you guys, and welcome to American Culture. This is the outfit that I made this morning. I am still working on how to make sleeves, so that's why a lot of the stuff I make doesn't have them yet. With that being said, I finished my Esther Fast yesterday. A word of advice: do not eat. Heed the warning of just do broth for maybe the first 24 to 48 hours afterwards. Really give your body some time to adjust to things going back in. And I'm not going to tell you how I know that food is a bad idea. With that being said, I'm going to tell you about the things that I learned and what I went through this time. It was a complete fast. No food, only water when the Lord just directed me to, or I had to take my medication. And the first thing that I learned is that when you really do commit your ways to God, like I am putting this in your hands, He will provide. He will provide comfort, solace, the whole 9 yards. So for any of you out there thinking that fasting is not something that you can do, as long as you honestly say, God, this is for you, of you, I am doing this to get closer to you, He'll provide for that. And that's really what this whole fast for me was about, was seeing how much God and how He is providing for the willing spirit that I now possess. I tell you guys that God has set me free from things I didn't even know I needed freedom from. Number one was the generational curse that is afflicting my family. Now, you guys, if you watched the other video on the first day when I did this, and I wasn't planning on making a video, but God was like, you got to talk. And that was therapeutic to me. I never said that stuff out loud and truthfully from my perspective. No, Mom, you're horrible. And I have dealt with you being horrible long enough. I just kind of kept that in. But God revealed to me that I was harboring unforgiveness, not for my mother. I have all the forgiveness for her, but for myself. We've all heard that, if you hate, then you got hatred in you. That's the reason why you can't love until you actually love yourself. And I didn't realize that although I had forgiven my mother, I hadn't forgiven myself. I still resented me. Now, granted, my mother, she resented having to do for me just because it didn't really work out with my father. He went up and died. So she was left with this kid to take care of, and she didn't want to. And during the course of my life, this is the reason why my prom dress was $3 and I never did anything. It wasn't in any activities. It's because she always acted like anything extra for me was a burden and a problem, and she just didn't want to deal with it. And I didn't realize that I was doing that to myself. I was like, Alicia, Bath and Body Works, really? Do you really need a new pair of sandals? I wanted to keep all of my resources for the impulsive things that I wanted to do. None of the stuff that I actually needed. And that was the same thing for my mother. So I realized that I was harboring feelings of mainly resentment towards myself and even bitterness for having to take care of me and do the extra stuff. And it turned into me not believing in God's, good graces and His abundance. It turned into me always thinking that if I go out and buy the new sewing machine for myself, something's gonna happen. I'm gonna be without this money, and I'm gonna blame you for getting that stupid thing that you didn't need in order to make your little crafts and hobbies. It was canceling me out of truly seeing God's graces and God's abundance. And I wasn't putting it in His hands. I was keeping it in mine. So my unforgiveness had me living my way and not God's way. So that was something that I released. The major lesson that I learned was really to stop adding myself to other people's lives and experience. And when I show up and add Jesus, I add God. And the funny thing, and it's not funny, I guess, the way God works, it's not even irony. The way God works is that in church, we are in a freedom series. And we're in the book of Galatians, and I got to go to Bible study tomorrow. And I was reading over the notes so I could prepare myself for some of the things that I wanted to say and I was thinking of. And I'm about to read to you one of the questions, and then I'm going to answer it because God had given me this answer before I read this thing. So give me just a quick second. I go to the Church of 1122. It's COE22.com. It's a great church for all of us out there who know that we have a big calling on our life and really are going to learn someplace in secret. It's not like I have to go to a school for this, but He told me to stay in this place and learn how to be who I'm becoming. And so that's what I'm doing. And one of the questions is verse 5 through 9 in Galatians, and it says, A little leaven leavens the whole lump. And it says, what does that mean and how does it speak to legalism? Even just a little bit of legalism, thinking circumcision or serving on Sundays helps our salvation, diminishes Jesus' work on the cross, and always leads to pride or despair. I'm going to go ahead and read that piece of that chapter to you so that you can see. So we're going to read 7. And it says, you were running a good race. Who cut in on you to keep you from obeying the truth? That kind of persuasion does not come from the one who calls you. A little yeast works through the whole batch of dough. I am confident in the Lord that you will take no other view. The one who is throwing you into confusion, whoever it may be, will have to pay the penalty. Now we go back to that question where it says, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. What does that mean and how does it speak to legalism? Now they're just saying here in church, they're talking about how you don't have to do all these extra works in order to be saved. You're saved by God's good graces, and that's true. You are saved, and grace means the things that God gives to you. He gives you air. He gives you hope. He gives you peace. He gives you freedom. And all of this is what saves you from the harsh realities of the world that we're living in. But most of us, we don't see it that way because we still think that we have to do something in order to experience something good. But the conversation that God had with me earlier this morning, he said, Alicia, when you think back to what your mother said. Now, when I told my mother that my sister had molested me, and I've said this before, but this is the conversation where, no, I'm done. If you want to pretend like this ain't the truth, I'm out of here. I'm not going to sit with that lie. And she said, I don't know what to believe. It wasn't an I don't know who. My mother said, I don't know what. She knew who to believe, which was me. I'm telling the truth, but she didn't want the what part. And God was letting me know that so often we experience discourse, strife, stress, brokenness in our relationships with our families, our friends, our lovers, etc. And we can quickly say, this is the work of Satan. Satan is doing this. But when's the last time the little red man popped up and orchestrated your chaos? He's not. Who's doing it? It's you. What are you doing that's doing it? And God really wanted me to now focus on the what. He said that's what most people don't do. They love to identify the who. It's easy to say that it's Satan, but he's got to be using you. So what are you doing that is creating the chaos? And that's when we go back to the verse. A little leaven, it kind of ruins the whole bunch. It changes things. For example, if I add leaven, which is the stuff that makes bread rise, if I add leaven to a tortilla, it's not a tortilla. If I add it to naan, it's not naan anymore. And so God was letting me know that when you add a little bit of you, your wishes, your will, your wants, and your desires to a situation, you're trying to change who that person is. And God doesn't need us to do that. You see, what God needs us to do is show up in his character. And 9 times out of 10, what does God do? He hears you. It's the reason why we trust and we believe, because we know that the Lord hears us. We do this even before he starts answering our prayers, because inherently we know he hears us and we wait in faith. And that is something that we as humanity, myself included, wasn't very good. I've gotten good at it, and I can give myself credit for that. But the older version of me that didn't know God, oh no, it wasn't about hearing you. It was about adding me and my thoughts and my wills and my ways to this, to see if you would agree, to see if you would change yourself. I was the leaven to unleavened bread. You're not here to change people. You have to believe that God has orchestrated to the most minute details of everybody's life. And he knows where all these, they're living their own little tree, and all these branches go to some other area. But that's for them in the Lord to figure out so that they can get on the right path, not you. A lot of us, we go in there with this mentality of I'm right, this is the way we need to go about it. And we're constantly pushing off our views and our thoughts on somebody else without questioning, what is exactly making me say this? What's making me say you shouldn't be, or that's not good? Because a lot of times what comes out of our mouth, it's not from God. It's from you, and it's from your life experience of trauma, drama, guilt, shame, hurt, pain, all that other good stuff that you now identify with. You essentially go around thinking that you're trying to save people from the same fate that you had when they never had the same fate that you had. Again, they're living a well-designed and orchestrated life by the Lord. So what he wanted me to do is he said, stop showing up when it comes to people coming to you needing an ear, and listen and just do my part. Do what I would do. Listen. That's where trust comes from. That's where their ability to believe in you comes from. Now, once you have somebody who can listen, you can listen to them and they can trust you, then you can start adding in more biblical principles. But it needs to be done without condemnation, guilt, shame. It needs to be done again without you. God will tell you what you should and should not be saying to someone. But 9 times out of 10, we don't ask God, what should I say to this person? We just start talking to them. And again, we're talking to them from our perspective. And so the major lesson that I got out of this fast was not just the who is doing this, because as you read in that, you got to check yourself. Somebody's trying to get you confused and away from the path. We know who that is and we will deal with them. But the what are you doing that's actually allowing you to deviate or have somebody else deviate from the course? Where are these words and these actions coming from? What is taking place that is bringing Satan's chaos to life? Because as I said earlier, the little red man, he's not showing up and saying, round 2, you are. So again, you guys, I learned a lot through this Esther fast. Obviously, I was fasting because I want my husband. That's a different video for another day, because girl's been celibate for a while. And that's one of the things that I think about. And again, it's something that people don't talk about when they're going through this. I'm waiting on God to send them. I know I'm not the only one. I hear a lot about the kingdom spouse stuff, and I get where they're going with that, because a lot of us are like, TikTok, where's he at? Where's she at type of thing. But yeah, you do go through all these things where it's like, I'd like to be intimate with somebody, not just on a sexual level, but on an I know you type of level. I can talk to you. And God kind of revealed some things to me about what I was waiting for and my next step of what I needed to do. It's mainly just to live as myself. Hey, you guys, this is American culture. Look at my clothes I made. That type of stuff. And to just, he will send them, and I'm good with that. But again, I'll make another video about what that feels like on a normal scale. But over the course of the past 3 days, like I said, my lesson was to work on forgiveness of self. That was like the final thing in order to get rid of the generational curses. Ours is lying and molestation. And I made a pact with myself and the Lord, and a commitment that ends with me. My children, my daughters, my nieces, anybody who is of my creation that I've created a relationship with will not suffer that. That stuff eventually gets into your bloodlines. Again, you guys, this is a much deeper subject to go on to, but it is something that is ingrained in you to deal with. It is not a coincidence that this just keeps happening over and over again. And God let me know that the reason why I had to be done with my mother was because I was ending those bloodline things. I'll end it with this. Part of what I was talking about earlier is because I have stopped talking to my mother, and a lot of people will come to me out of confusion and be like, honor thy mother and thy father. And I have sat intimately with the Lord. And in fact, when my mother hung up that phone and said, don't talk to me, don't text me, it was God's voice that said, honor it. And I know why, because again, he had given me the proverb of Alicia, you're the wheat and she's the weeds. And I had to allow the two of you to grow up together for a while, because if I tore you apart, it was going to ruin aspects of you as well. So we had to grow along with each other. And that's what we were doing. And God had given me that revelation before all this happened. I told her before all this happened, and we were even upset with each other. She was upset with me. I'm not upset with her. I had told her, I said, God's telling me I'm leaving. And he had started giving me prophetically verses to give to her. James chapter, I think it was chapter 3, verse 5, or it was either chapter 5, verse 3. But basically it was about stop the gossiping, watch your mouth, and all this other stuff. things that she needed to work on. And it was never going to happen if I'm there, because she was using me as too much of a catalyst to fuel her own evil. So it's harvest season for myself and many of us, and it's move on. But I did have some people in my life who wanted me to kind of let bygones be bygones and go back into that, because they were unaware of the major transition that I was making in my life, and that this was indeed orchestrated by the Lord. My ego is not saying, Mom, get out of my life. My ego had me calling and texting and wanting to be there for her and all this other stuff. My perception of what I should be doing, Alicia should be doing, had me doing that. But God was like, no, this needs to end. And so that's what I'm talking about when I tell people, stop showing up as you and start showing up as God. There are going to be circumstances and situations where we don't get to use the word of the Bible to weaponize. And that's what that was. It was turning the word into a weapon. It was something that, hey, this is designed to cut your idea of what you think is right in half. And God says, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And just like in that verse, he says, the people who are trying to confuse you and lead you astray, I will deal with them. So we have to be mindful when we are weaponizing the word and when we're turning it into a weapon that will not lead to prosperity for ourselves. What God let me know is that, number one, I had to work on forgiveness. Number two, I had to start showing up as him. And 90% of the time, that's just listening. It's not me adding in to this and that and all this other stuff. Now, if they ask me questions or stuff for my own opinion, then I can give them that. There's probably going to be times where I have to take a step back and be like, okay, Jesus, what do I need to say? But it is more about, we just need to take a listening standpoint, because sometimes people, they do need to get things out there, just like I did the other day. And then that opens the space. Once you bring things to the light, God will start talking to them. And so that's something that I'm going to start telling people. I'm here to listen to you, because once you bring things to the light, God will start talking to you, and it'll kind of help you to stop thinking that you need to talk to this person and that person and this person and so forth. So that's what I learned during my fast. Forgiveness, and stop pouring myself into situations. God has got it under control. He's sending people to me that need to be heard. 9 times out of 10, it's because, just like when I made that video about my mother, there was all this other stuff that came through. He's going to allow me to sit in that physical place where people vent and they say things, and God is going to be able to come in once it is brought to the light to help them. I'm not here to be leaven and change them or make them any different, because they are fearfully and wonderfully made in the eyes of God, and they are living the way that they're supposed to. If we're having those conversations about how do I, reach salvation or things that they're going through, they're doing the job correctly. So my job, the majority of our jobs, is just to listen. Have a blessed day, you guys.